oh, those opportunities, we might be missing out. They might never come back around. Stop that. When do I know when to press on the gas and when to press on the brakes? And when God says focus on family, we rest assured that God's taking care of business. Well, welcome back to the podcast. So as many of you know, Easton Allwood, our number 2 kiddo, he has taken over my YouTube account. He's putting the podcast on my YouTube channel for me. If you guys don't subscribe to me on YouTube, you should. If you like watching people speak instead of just listening, like that's the reason why we're resuscitating the YouTube channel. But anyway, when we get to the end of every recording, I just kind of talk off the cuff or something. And I said to Easton, I said, are you putting the, B-roll or funny little clips at the end of the podcast? He's like, do you not watch your own YouTube videos? And I'm like, first of all, no, never, ever. And so I don't watch my own videos back. Number 1. Number 2, I'm like, but are you using it? And he's like, yeah. And I go, okay, well, do people think I'm funny? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I go, well, are they commenting I'm funny? And he said, no, they're not. And so this is a plea. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, if you could just leave a comment, Jen, I think you're funny. That would be amazing. I think I'm halfway entertaining and my kids do not. Okay. So listen, we're going to talk today about keeping your family first. I was actually trying to figure out what do I want to title this? And I'll let the team title it, but I'm talking about keeping your family first over business, or how do you make the hard decisions in business of what to say yes to and what to say no to, or how do you make sure that you're prioritizing family over business? And that's what I'm talking about. I just don't know what to title it. Okay. And I'm going to share this podcast with you because as you are listening to this podcast, more than likely, and I don't actually know when different episodes release because I have a team that does that. Shout out to podcasting team. Thank you, Ashley, Nell McKenzie, and Easton. And so I don't actually know when this will release, but I believe it's going to be while I'm in Mexico City on a missions trip. Now, I'm going to tell you a story here. And the reason I just want you to know, the reason I'm telling you this story is not to get a pat on the back. Okay. I could care less about, you guys saying I'm a good person. So that is not it. But the reason I'm sharing this is because I want to use it as an example of how I try to make some decisions in terms of what I say yes to and what I say no to, because I think it will help some of you. Inevitably, I get questions in my mastermind, in my inner circle, with people who are wanting to know, how do I balance, especially summer and family, with, still needing to do business? How do I prioritize things? When do I know when to press on the gas and when to press on the brakes? And I think it's an interesting question and by the way, there is no formula. Okay. So it's not like I can give you a 1, 2, 3, and you're going to be able to answer all of those questions. But I do think it's important for me just to kind of talk through the way I prioritize things. And I think that in doing that, it may help some of you. And also for some of you who feel like you almost need permission at times, I think it will be helpful to you. For those of you that are this is actually what I want to do. I just need somebody that's gone before me, that's a little bit further ahead of me, to just say, yes, this is okay to do. This is the way, and you're good to do it. So that's my intent behind this podcast. So I know that it's sometimes hard in the decision-making process when you have an opportunity to do something in business and you have an opportunity to do things in family, and they're at the same time. So whether that's summer, whether that's vacation, whether that's launches, whether that's speaking, I know that figuring out and determining how to prioritize things, it can be a little bit, but there are definitely seasons when your focus needs to be more on business, and there's other seasons where your focus needs to be more on family. Okay. So let's talk through this just a little bit. If you have a kiddo in crisis, work waits, period. Okay. Can I just say that? I had one of the ladies in my mastermind recently. She's like, I got a kiddo in crisis. I'm like, then work's on hold. That is the bottom line for me and for our family. And I believe should be for everybody's. Kid in crisis is always more important than business. And that goes for, spouse in crisis, you in crisis, whatever. All right. So crisis is always the priority, number 1. But I think that inevitably women especially are but how do I balance work and how do I balance business? To which I always respond, listen, I don't know that you can balance. Okay. I think balance is something that belongs in a gym for people that are great at gymnastics, that there's balance that's required there. I don't know how to balance my job with my family. And I don't know that that should be our goal. What I do think should be our goal is that when God says focus here, we focus here. And when God says focus there, we focus there. And when God says focus on business, we rest assured that God's taking care of family. And when God says focus on family, we rest assured that God's taking care of business. Does that make sense? And so that's number one. Okay. And I think that it's number two, it's really important that you understand there will be seasons when you have to focus more. You're in the middle of a launch. You're trying to make, some money. You're rolling out a brand new thing and you'll have to focus a little more on business. And by the way, that's not always bad. It's okay to see your children be like, you know what, mom's got to put some extra focus here. And I'm not talking about like working 16-hour days for weeks on end. I'm not talking about that. Okay. So let's not take it to the extreme, but I am talking about it is okay. Oh, this is going to step on some toes. Okay. Lord, give me wisdom here. It's okay that your children know that your world does not revolve only around them. Because when your kiddos get the sense that your world revolves only around them, that you're setting them up actually for failure in the real world. You really are. But when your kiddos see that your priority is to also prioritize in due season, whatever God's asking you to, like, just assume that God's taking care of them if he's asking you to prioritize something in business. Does that make sense? It's okay for you to not have everything revolve around your children because that it's just setting them up for failure. So our kids know when mom's got to have head down and she's focusing on this. Our kids know that dad right now is launching Fairway Finest, his line of golf apparel. Our kids know when they are the full focus, and they know other times, like, this is what we have to do to eat. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So know that, number one. Know two, that there are seasons for everything. And there will be some seasons when you need to focus more over here and some when you need to focus more over there. There will be seasons when you're able to say yes to more than other seasons when you just have to say no to more. And so I think it's really helpful to kind of know, like, whatever season you're in, though, what to have as like a non-negotiable, then just some non-negotiables, so that when opportunities come up, when questions get asked, when things present themselves, when you're having to make decisions for your business, if you already have something set in stone, then I think that that's super helpful. Let me give you an example. We really don't do much launching in the summer because my priority is pulling back. I don't pause the business, but I pull back. I only do the things that I have to do during the summer because my kids are home and I want to see them. I want to spend time with them. I want to be at the pool. I want a vacation, whatever. And so, I don't want to miss kids' birthdays. Maybe your priorities could be, your non-negotiables are, you're not going to be working on any holidays. You're not going to work on any kids' birthdays. You're not going to speak during the summer months. You're not going to do anything over Christmas vacation. But I think that it's up to you based on your values. And, if you're married, what your spouse and you are in agreement with, what you feel like God's leading you to do, to figure out kind of what are your non-negotiables. So one of my non-negotiables is that I have always said that I wanted to take each of our children on a missions trip through our church or through a church or, in some way before they graduated from high school. So and then there's many reasons for this, by the way. I want our kids to develop a heart to serve. I really want our children to have a good perspective on how they're living and how other people live, and to be compassionate and to be loving, and to be able to see just, the differences in cultures, to see the differences in people, to see just the differences in general. And by the way, I need that too. So there's that. And so I did not ever go on a missions trip because I wasn't saved until I was a junior in high school. And was not raised in a Christian household. So I didn't ever go on a missions trip. So this is like a new thing for me. Okay. But it's always, Jason knows this is a priority. Before my kids graduate high school, I want to take them on a missions trip. So 6 years ago, I took Noah Allwood on a missions trip to Mexico City with our church. And, that was fabulous. We had just a great time serving the people in Mexico City. It was amazing. And then, slightly or right after that, the pandemic hit when Easton was in high school. And so for 4 years, there have not been any missions trips through our church, 3 years or 4 years, almost 4 years, I think, because there were different guidelines, stipulation, rules, laws, all of the things. Okay. So, so that kind of messed things up for Easton. We're going to still figure out how to get him on a missions trip. So with that being said, next week, I was supposed to be in Ojai, California for my Wellspring Mastermind that I'm a member of. Jason goes with me because we're both a part of that. You know, he's learning how he can better steward Fairway Finest, his company. I'm learning how to better steward my coaching company. And so we were going to be gone for, 3 nights, 4 days, whatever, to a beautiful resort in Ojai, California. It's bougie, all the things. We were so looking forward to it. Okay. So it's been on the calendar since last fall. But then our church announced that they were going to be doing a missions trip. And, Ava looks at me one day and she's like, oh, I want to go. I want to go. And I'm like, I know, because Ava has such a servant's heart. She's my kiddo that we go serve the homeless on occasion together. We go do something called Honk and Holler, which is giving meals to people that need meals in the inner city. She goes with me sometimes, with her dad sometimes. So she has a heart for serving. And so, when your 15-year-old daughter looks at you and says, can we go on a missions trip? I just want you to know that the answer is always yes. At least in my world, the answer is always going to be yes. So I'm like, absolutely, baby. So then, of course, I pull out my day designer, which is the day planner that I use. And I'm like, oh, no, they're the same dates. They're the same dates. No. And like everything inside of me was screaming. I'm like, how does that happen? They can't be on the same dates. And because I'm like naturally just somebody who tries to figure things out, I'm a figure outer. I'm like, okay, we can figure this out. I'm supposed to be leaving. Actually, I was supposed to leave this morning as I'm recording this for Ojai with Jason. So that this is Wednesday morning, and we would be returning on either Saturday night or Sunday morning. But Saturday morning is when Ava and I are leaving for Mexico City. And so even though I was trying to figure this out, could I fly from California to Mexico City? Well, then I would miss out on the part of the experience of where we're with all the other, there's 20 of us going on this missions trip. So then I'm not traveling with my group. I'm not traveling with Ava. And also she's having to go through customs and things without her mama. And by the way, I'm just not okay with that. And so, looking at the calendar, I'm like, this is going to cause a lot of stress and a lot of, me losing peace, and it's not going to work out. Okay. So the answer, because a non-negotiable is taking Ava on a mission trip, that's a non-negotiable. So the answer is no to my mastermind. And even though I was sad about it, the truth is it wasn't a super hard decision to make. I did talk to some of the women that are in my prayer pod for the Wellspring. And I'm like, okay, I need to make sure you guys are in agreement, help walk me through this, But the bottom line is when your 15-year-old asks you to go on a missions trip, the answer for me is always going to be yes, which means that I had to say no to that. And so here's the thing that I think sometimes happens when we say no. I think often we're scared to say no for a couple of reasons. Even if we know this is a priority, even though we know that this is the right thing to do, sometimes I think it's hard to say no for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was concerned that the person that leads the mastermind, which is Pete Vargas, would be upset. By the way, that is not Pete's mojo. He's not somebody that gets upset about things like that. But I take my responsibility and my yes being a yes very seriously. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to disappoint him. And those of you that are like me and you're Enneagram 3s, you don't want to disappoint people. And if you're super responsible people, you don't like to go back and have to say, you know what, thought I could do this. Turns out I can't. And so, I had some big feelings I had to get over there. But I think that sometimes we're scared to say no because we're afraid we're going to disappoint people. I think sometimes we're afraid to say no because it's something that we've already paid for. We've already invested in. I'm thinking of my own mastermind. We had, a meetup in April. We were in Nashville. The women in my mastermind are meeting in November here in Kansas City. And I hope every single one of them can come to it. And yet I know that there are some of them that cannot. And it's disappointing, for them. And it's disappointing for me not to get to go to mine because they pay, to be inside of my mastermind and they're missing an integral part. And I pay to be in Pete's mastermind and I'm missing a really integral part. And so that's a bummer, right? It's a bummer. And then, I think, well, what if What if I'm missing out on conversations? What if I'm missing out on opportunities to partner with people or collaborations or, learn something that maybe I didn't? And the truth is, like, when I tell you, I would rather go to a business event than a concert, than the Grammys, than the Emmys. I could care less about Hollywood. Give me a business event any day of the year, any day of the year. And if that's you and you're watching on YouTube, will you comment below just to let me know that I'm not alone? And so, and the other thing is I totally am going to have FOMO. I know I'm going to be missing out. I know they're going to be doing incredible things. And so, am I sad? Yeah, I am sad, but I also know that I'm doing the right thing. And I think it's important that we remember that every time we say yes to something, we're inevitably saying no to something else. So if I say yes to staring at my phone at night, I'm saying no to having conversations with my husband. If I say yes to a coaching call in an evening, I am saying no to family time and possibly family dinner. Does that make sense? And so just know that, and that's, by the way, it's a Lisa Turkhurst. She has a great book on this called The Best Yes. I haven't read that in many, many years, but every time we say yes to something, we're inevitably saying no to something else. It makes me think also, I was supposed to be speaking at an event before the pandemic for Stu McLaren, who was a business coach of mine for many, many years. I love Stu. And he had asked me to be on stage at his event for Tribe. And so it's a couple weeks like before the event is getting ready to come up. And it wasn't like I was a keynote or anything like that, but I think Stu was going to be having me on stage and we were going to have a conversation of some kind. But anyway, a friend of mine was battling lung cancer and was about to have her first chemo appointment. And she called and asked me if I would take her to her first chemo. And easy yes. Hard then to call Stu, but easy yes for me to say yes to. And, the thing is, like, I think sometimes we say with our lips the things that are important to us. But then when we're caught in the moment of, shoot, now I need to let my actions back that up, that's where things can get sticky. Because in my head for a split second, then too, I'm like, how can I do both? How can I not disappoint Stu and still do that while also still be a good friend? And if I'm going to, and there was conviction because I'm like, if I'm going to say that my friends and my family matter above business, then it has to be an easy yes for me to say yes to taking her to her first chemo. Does that make sense? Otherwise, because I felt real convicted. Otherwise, Jennifer, you're a hypocrite, is what I was thinking. You say with your lips that your friends and family are more important. So you've got to say no to business so you can say yes to someone who needs you. Again, I'm not sharing this so that I can impress you with anything because there's nothing to be impressed by. Let me just tell you that I've gotten this wrong a lot. But I just want to give some of you permission that you may be needing, that God may have you in a season of no's. And I know we're like, oh, those opportunities, we might be missing out. They might never come back around. Stop that. Absolutely stop that. I know when Jason and I, when our kids were little, and we had 3 kids under the age of 6, and the boys were 22 months apart. So that was pretty hairy for a moment, but I had my painting company, which had just taken off when I was pregnant with Noah. I had Noah, I got back to work pretty quickly in terms of I was doing all of the getting us jobs and other women were out working for me. And then I would take him, in the baby carrier to job sites and make sure they were doing okay, et cetera. And then Easton came along and Jason and I we felt very convicted that for us, I was supposed to stay home during that time when his career was really taking off, and put the kids first. And we didn't want to put them in childcare. It was just a priority for us. But I can remember being home, the majority of the time with the children. Eventually I went back to work 4 hours a week and then 6 hours a week and then 12. But then we had Ava and I was back home again. But I can remember feeling like I was watching all these other people in my industry, all these women going off to a painting school here and a weekend training here and a week here. And I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, when is going to be my turn? And I'm speaking to someone right now who's at home thinking, when is it going to be my turn? Right now, all you're doing is wiping bottoms and you're, making sure the kids have their chicken nuggets for lunch and you're taking them to the park. And you're wondering, will there be a season when I get to focus on business? And I'm just going to tell you that for me, the answer was absolutely yes. There were years, and I'm talking years, you guys, where Jason would leave in the morning before 8 and get home after 6. And it wasn't just 5 days a week. He also worked Sundays. And so he was out of the house on Sundays. He was home on Sundays, but inevitably still working. And the kids were little. And I can just remember thinking, okay, the only like little sections of time that I have to work are before the kids all get up in the morning, when the boys are napping at the same time in the afternoon, and after they go to bed at night. And by the way, I built this business during those nuggets of time. So I just want you to know that if you do have windows, you can still do something. But there were years where I felt a little bit like a racehorse. Like how like before a horse race, the horses are in the stalls and they're like doing that thing that horses do with their legs. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm sorry that for the hand motions here, but they're like, they're behind the gate. And they're just itching to be let go. And I can remember feeling like that in business, but I also knew that God was like, hold, stay with the kids, hold. And then by the time Ava went to kindergarten, it was like the gate opened. It was like God just flooded my business with favor and opportunity. So even though I felt like I was missing out for an entire season when I was at home raising kids, I believe that God honored me from honoring the season that he wanted me to stay present in. So I want to encourage some of you with that today. We serve a God of order, and order affects your outcome. That's my pastors always say that order affects outcome. So you are not missing out when you say no to the good thing, but that gives you the ability to say yes to the great or the right thing. And so somebody just maybe needs to hear that today. I did not at all plan on talking this long on this podcast, or I didn't even have all of this in my notes, but I hope that this just gave someone permission today to skip some things, to say no to some things. By the way, if you are not certain that you're supposed to be in a season of saying no, but you're using, your family or using the summer months as an excuse just to pull back because you're scared of, what could happen in your business, like that's something totally different. That's a totally different podcast. But for those of you who are you're needing to make some decisions on what to say no to, what to say yes to, how do you, like in a practical way, sometimes say, no to business and yes to your family and friends and other things. I hope that this was really helpful today. So if it was, would you do me a hot solid if you would leave me a comment on YouTube? If you are listening to this on one of your podcast app, if you could just leave me a review. Of course, I would love it if it was a 5-star, but if you could do that, it would just mean the world to me if you've never done that before. So thank you so much, friends. I hope that this was valuable to you today. I'm always wanting the very, very best for you. So we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye. Dogs barking. And if you're watching me right now, I have a daughter that just acted like a bunny rabbit. If you just saw that, she walked by my office doors.